Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Designing an Exemplary Course open course and to the first week on course design. My name is Sharon Anthus and I'm the Director of Client Engagement here at Blackboard, and I also manage Blackboard's Exemplary Course Program. So I will be facilitating the live sessions for the next 4 weeks, and we're very excited to be partnering with the CourseSites team, the Exemplary Course Directors and Winners, and each of you to engage in this awesome learning experience. So a couple of course announcements or housekeeping notes before we get started. Last night you should have received an email from us regarding some course updates. If you didn't receive that email for whatever reason, you can also review those important announcements under the Announcements module under the course updates in the course itself. So we're going to do a quick overview of the course, and then I'll pass it over to our speakers today. We have Maisie Keynes from the College of North Atlantic. She's one of our Exemplary Course Directors. We also have Joe Lane from Capella University, and he's one of the 2012 Exemplary Course winners. And Geraldine Stevens from Wayne State University, who's another Exemplary Course winner from 2012. This session is being recorded and will be sent out after today's call. And if you have any questions today, please enter them into the chat window. As you heard earlier, the sound has been turned off, or the mics have been turned off. And we're going to try to get to many of the questions as possible. But if we do miss your question for whatever reason, please feel free to post it into the Q&A forum in the course itself after today's session. So a couple of things, just wanted to review the goals of what we're doing for the next 4 weeks. So you're going to have the opportunity to identify the pillars of what makes an exemplary course and how to integrate them into course development, as well as apply them to course construction. And you'll also have an opportunity to evaluate online course components and strategies through collaborative peer review. So we've structured this open course so you can determine your own personal learning objectives and outcomes and level of participation. We realize that each of you will commit to the course in different ways. It's really up to you. You can simply review the content, you can participate in 1 week, or you can participate in all weeks. It's really up to you. But to maximize the benefits of participation, optional homework assignments will be provided each week as a way to apply the principles to your own course. The course will provide a framework for you to use the Exemplary Course rubric to self-evaluate your course building work and have others in the course provide that important feedback. We also have a group of 70 people who have kindly volunteered to be peer reviewers in this course. And you might be curious about who these peer reviewers are. Well, they are individuals who have participated in the Exemplary Course Program, or they're Blackboard certified trainers. We welcome all of you to participate in the review process, so you can feel free to comment on your group's blog. You don't have to be an official reviewer to provide feedback. Every Tuesday evening, we'll be sending out a weekly course announcement that will provide reminders of the live session, and then other tips and tricks so you can get the most out of your experience over the next month. And it will also provide a link to the CourseSites blog where we'll be highlighting a summary of all the key themes of what have been discussed over the previous week. So a couple of important things about how to earn a badge. We've created a digital badge, and you can earn this badge through, for week 0, you need to review the orientation and overview. You need to enroll in a group and complete the icebreaker activity. And you need to update your roster and settings and personal information. And I do have to say I'm super excited to see how many of you have already enrolled in a group and completed that icebreaker activity. And then for the rest of the weeks, you need to attend that live session or watch the recording and contribute to a discussion board in your group. So before I pass it over to Maisie, I did want to take a moment to thank a few key people. Without this group, this course would have not happened, and they've been working endlessly to make this a successful experience for all of you. So I just wanted to say a special thank you to our CourseSites team, Sarah and Jarl, Dr. Taria Bond from Cal Baptist University. She was the course instructional designer, the Exemplary Course Directors, and the Exemplary Course winners who are presenting with us, as well as the peer reviewers. And then, of course, a big thank you to everyone who has joined us today and enrolled in the course. So with that, I would like to pass it over to Macy Keynes, who's going to be discussing course design, part of the rubric. And Macy, do you want to take it from there?
Thank you, Sharon. And as Sharon has alluded to, today's session will just cover the course design section of the Exemplary Course Program rubric. And here is just a little bit about myself. I'm the campus administrator at College of the North Atlantic Clarenville campus in Newfoundland, Canada. We have 17 campuses on the island, and I'm just located about an hour and a half west of the city of St. John. I currently hold a master's degree in distributed learning from Royal Roads University. The campus that I work out of also hosts the college's distributed learning service, of which I was a faculty development specialist for about 10 years. And I've been a member of the Exemplary Course Program now since 1999. Just a very brief overview of today's agenda, and I will introduce each speaker as they are about to present on their award-winning courses, and that will be Geraldine and Joe. I will also provide an overview of the exemplary course design section of the rubric that covers just the course design elements itself. We will then showcase for you highlights from 2 of the 2012 award-winning courses, and we will provide some time at the end of the presentation for some questions and answers. So, what are we looking for when we talk about course design as a part of the Exemplary Course Program? Well, essentially it addresses instructional design. And the 4 areas that the Exemplary Course Program focuses on includes the goals and objectives, the content presentation, learner engagement, and technology use. And we're going to look at each of these sections a little more closely and provide some great examples for you. The first section that we will break down for you is the goals and objectives. So what are we looking for? Well, in an exemplary course, we look to see that the goals and objectives are easily located within the course. We have certainly had experiences in the past where as directors and reviewers, we were unable to locate goals and objectives for the students. They are also clearly written at an appropriate level and reflect the desired learning outcomes. So generally we tend to look for different levels of objectives, for instance, in a PhD program than we would see in an introductory first-year university program. We also like to see that the goals and objectives are written in measurable outcomes, so at the end of the day, students know exactly what they are expected to be able to do. And of course, we also look to see that the goals and objectives are made available in a variety of areas within the course, not just within the syllabus, but for example, within each individual learning unit as well. And I'm going to pass it over to Geraldine. She's going to be our first presenter to showcase how she has met this criteria within her course. And Geraldine is a little bit about Geraldine. She's an assistant professor in the College of Education at Wayne State University. She began teaching online in 1997, and in fact I was also involved in the WebCT LMS evaluation project way back when. And she has developed a Master's of Education in Career and Technical Education. She was a second place finalist at the 2011 Sloan C Excellence in Online Teaching Award, and of course was an exemplary course program winner at the 2012 Blackboard Conference, and she holds a master's degree in adult and continuing education and a doctorate in curriculum in instruction from Wayne State University. And it's over to you, Geraldine.
To begin, let me help you give you a little background. I think that goals and objectives are outcome statements describing the skills and knowledge that I think learners will acquire in the instructional process. In the exemplary course program that I submitted for review, I include these goals and objectives or outcome statements across the course. I begin by listing them as in the outline of activities as the outcomes for each one of the projects. If you take a moment to preview them, students will know exactly what it is they're expected to do in this particular project. The outcomes are also listed in the course syllabus and in the course objectives. The course objectives is a page, a Blackboard page that simply has all of the course objectives, and they're loaded by project number. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Macy.
Thank you, Geraldine. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jolene, who is an instructional designer at Capella University. But before I do, just a little bit about Joe. As I said, he is an instructional designer at Capella University, and Capella has won numerous awards with the Exemplary Course Program. Joe is a teacher, a writer, a facilitator, and a lifelong learner. And of course, besides working in the public schools teaching system, he's worked in business, nonprofit organizations in education, and marketing roles. It's over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Maisie. I trust everyone can hear me okay. I've got just a couple things I wanted to say about goals and objectives. The main thing is that Capella has, I have an advantage working at Capella because our course room is structured around the whole concept of learning outcomes, so that each program within the university has defined outcomes for learners when they finish their program, which are broken down into competencies that are the end result of each course. And then each of those competencies is achieved by means of attaining certain learning objectives, and that's what I've got on the slide here. We also have pretty much a rule within the university that all of our course activities have to somehow align to the learning objective and the competency. And when I put those objectives into the system, I really can't save an activity in the system, in the authoring system, until I align it to an objective and a competency. In order to make sure the learners understand this, the unit introduction in each unit, and they're typically 10-unit courses, explains that relationship of the unit topic and the competencies and the learning objectives in that unit. Next slide, please, Maisie. For this specific course, which is designated as HS, meaning Human Services 8204, the goals and objectives were a little different than typical online courses. First of all, it's a doctoral course, which means that the goals are higher level goals. And secondly, it's a leadership course, which means that the types of goals they're not strictly cognitive mastery. They're more, in many cases, they're almost behavioral or action-oriented goals. So for example, just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, one of the main competencies is apply a multidisciplinary approach to advocate for public services initiatives. And a learning objective out of that was to adapt principles and practices to integrate change. So these are fairly high-level objectives. The course really fell into two, I'd call them frameworks. The first 4 units addressed looking at leadership models, self-assessing against leadership models. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But the bulk of the course, the remaining 6 units, were around objectives that related to building skills, building the ability to practice, to actually carry out the types of processes that we're talking about. So a little bit different kind of challenge, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Macy?
Thank you, Joe. We'll move into the content presentation section. And essentially, as a part of the Exemplary Course Program, From a student's perspective, we're looking to see, is it well organized? Is it straightforward to find? How difficult is it to progress through the materials? So we're looking to see that content is chunked in manageable sections. For instance, we have distinct learning units or modules versus a series of lengthy links to content that for some reason students aren't able to distinguish in any form. The navigation within is intuitive. The content flows in a logical progression for students, and that it is presented using a variety of appropriate mechanisms. For instance, content modules, single pages, links to external resources, possibly the use of RSS feeds, print materials as some possible examples, and that it's also enhanced with some visual and auditory elements. That supplementary resources may be made available, for instance, the use of course CDs, textbooks, course manuals, and so on. And I will pass it back to both Joe and Geraldine so that they can showcase to you how they have met the criteria in their courses.
Hello again, everyone. The way that we set up the course content in this particular course, students work towards satisfying the course outcomes in 3 unique learning modules. These modules, for the purposes of this course, were called projects. You have Project 1, Project 2, and Project 3. Within each project are learning activities. In this particular project, there are 4 tasks or reading assignments. There are course links to all the major folders that are outlined in the project and the outline of activities for the project. That way students have one-click access to the information needed while working on the assignments. Once the project due date is passed, then the Blackboard menu is reduced. For example, in Project 2 and Project 3, the menus have been reduced. When those projects are active, then the full course or the full assignment or the task within each one of the projects is open and available to students. What happened?
This is Joe. I think the slides got a little ahead of ourselves. Geraldine, I think you completed your portion. Is that correct?
I have one more slide, but that's okay. Go on forward.
Oh, so that would be slide 16. Go ahead.
I can't seem to get it to come up.
There it is. Content is chunked in manageable segments.
I don't see it. I don't see it. Do you see it?
I have it.
I'm seeing it, yeah.
Okay. I'm not real sure. I don't see it. I'm going to have to figure out what's going on my end. But we're going to go on. Joe, I'm going to go on and hand it over to you, and hopefully I'll be able to figure out what I've done wrong on this end.
Okay, no problem. The content presentation in the leadership course that I was talking about, and I suggested it was broken into these 2 pieces, one on learning the leadership models and the other on learning the practice part, the multidisciplinary approach. In learning the leadership models, those first 4 units, content was presented first in readings, which were mostly primary readings by researchers in the fields of leadership and psychology and organizational development, which we chose deliberately from a range outside the discipline that the human services people would have been familiar with for reasons that will be clear in a minute. And in 2 of those cases, we had them take self-assessments as part of their getting a sense of what that model meant in terms of leadership. And of course, we had them discuss the results of their self-assessments. Then the second half of the course, we were asking them to actually apply what they learned about themselves and the way that they pursue the leadership role to carry out a process called a multidisciplinary approach, and that's what's summarized on the screen for you. I've drawn it as if it were a linear process of 4 steps, and the practitioners tell me that's not always how it happens, but that there's always a phase in a human services situation of gathering input, of first just learning about this client and what the client's problem is, that there's then a phase of taking the time to synthesize ideas from the client, from people who've worked with the client, from people who witnessed whatever happened, if that's a situation. Then there's a phase of getting together with people from different areas who can help this client and figuring out what the best solution is. And by the way, figuring out if there's anything in the system that's keeping them from providing that solution. And then finally, the human services leader is supposed to conceptualize this situation and communicate. And each of those 4 phases is taught in the course, and in each of those 4 phases, the learners have their opportunity to actually practice that, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. So Maisie, back to you.
Thank you, Joe. And it does seem like we are having a few technical difficulties, but I do apologize and ask that you bear with us as we move through the presentation. It is being recorded, and the slides and the presentation will be made available in the open course. Let's move on to the learner engagement section. And what we're looking for as a part of the Exemplary Course Program is that the course design is such that it's engaging and appealing for the students. So essentially, it's clear how the instructional strategies are going to enable students to reach their goals and objectives. The design includes guidance for learners to work with the content in meaningful ways. For example, pre-reading outlines, web quests, challenges such as devil's advocate, and so on. Higher order thinking is expected of the learners and explained with examples or models. So we will be looking for analysis, problem solving, critical thinking. And individualized instruction, remedial activities, or resources for advanced learning activities are provided. And again, I'm going to pass it back to Geraldine and Joe for them to showcase their courses, and hopefully Geraldine is back on track with her slides.
So Geraldine, you need to push the talk button again.
Okay, here we go. As you all, I'm quite sure I'm not the only one that hasn't. This is the first time they've done that, but we're going to work through this. As Maisie's indicated, critical aspects of learner engagement include the obvious relationship of instructional strategies and outcomes, and providing clear guidance on how the course content is, students are going to engage in the course content to achieve the stated outcomes. Towards this effort, all of my courses, or all of my online courses, ensure that the projects and the content, the projects and content area modules are consistent in design and layout. This includes sequencing the activities and assignments in numerical order. However, this does not mean that everything has to be completed sequentially. What this does is it gives the students and it gives me a navigation point, what we've done, what we haven't done. The next thing that it does, the other thing that I include is consistent use of icons throughout the entire course site. For example, every time you see a webinar icon, that indicates that the student is going to engage in a webinar. Every time you see a movie or a video icon, that means that they're going to engage in a video. Could you change the slide, please? For the next part of the learner engagement, all of the projects have what I call an outline of activity. That's a written step-by-step guide for the students to complete the project. That outline of activity also includes an audio version for students that have hearing impediments. It also includes a video. Within each project is also supplemental resources. The supplemental resources contains information that will help students that remedial information, as well as supplemental information for them to go beyond the current outcome. Within each module is also an effectiveness survey. What I use with the effectiveness survey is an anonymous feedback instrument, and I tie it to our student evaluation of teaching, our SET instrument. And what that does is provides me with feedback to help me enhance the course, as well as tweak the course as the course is going on. And then finally, within each one of the modules, there is a course link to the gradebook. That way, once I send students and let them know that the project has been scored, they can go right to the project and go right to the gradebook to assess, to find out what their assessment was. You can click the slide again. And I'm done. Joe, on you.
Thanks, Geraldine. I really like that idea of the project checklist and the anonymous feedback as you go. I could see lots of ways to use that. Great idea. We should go to the next slide, which is slide 29. It has there it is, Riverbend City image. In the case of my course, learner engagement was actually accomplished partly by traditional means, writing papers and writing discussion posts, that type of thing. But also a lot of the more innovative type of learner engagement we did really involved using the technology tools. So these next couple of slides, I'm really addressing both of those criteria. The first slide refers to a resource that I was very fortunate to be able to use. That's an actual simulation that Capella built a couple of years ago for the purpose of dealing with realistic kinds of problems. It's a very robust simulation, and what it enables you to do, there's a set of characters, there's a situation, there's a set of screens, and when you design a particular course, you can create situations and scenarios that fit that course. It takes place in the fictional Riverbend City, which in some ways has very similar characteristics, suspiciously similar to our hometown of Minneapolis, but that's another story. The purpose of using this tool for learner engagement was to give us the ability to actually create scenarios. Now you talk about individualizing what you do. We created 3 scenarios depending on how the particular learner most often practiced. Did they practice with kids, with the elderly, or with multicultural situations? So a scenario was created for each, and the learners could select the case that most related to their practice and practice the steps of that multidisciplinary process using the case. Now the only thing that was provided in Riverbend City was actually a setup. And we can go to the next slide so I can talk about that. Each of these 3 cases, rather than seeing the entire case worked out, the problem was set, kind of like a case study that you might read, but in this case done by media. The problem was set with these screens which show the characters. You hear them, there's audio, but the words actually appear on the screen to help with those situations where some learners either aren't able to hear or can't hear as well, but still maintain that kind of dramatic quality. Although some people say it looks a little bit more like a cartoon strip. There's very serious cases. And the output of their gathering all of these kinds of information is that they take that case and they walk it through each of those steps that I had on the screen a while ago. They gather data, they synthesize the ideas, they collaborate, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and they then do a presentation. They conceptualize what they think the solution should be, and they do a presentation. During the collaboration, they lead a 10-minute synchronous session using an online synchronous tool like the one we're using now. We happen to use Adobe Connect Pro, but it's a similar kind of thing where each learner is responsible for leading that discussion on the case they chose for 10 minutes. Let's go to the next slide.
Hey Joe, sorry, this is Sharon. Quick question, because there's quite a few questions in the chat window, just about
Sure.
what software you use to create that scenario, that image that was just on the slide before.
Well, that's a great question. I wish I had an answer. I'll have to pursue that. As you'll see at the very end of the presentation, I'm lucky enough to work with a team, including a group of media designers, and that they would be the people who would know what software was used there. But I'll make a note to follow up on that. Was there another question, Sharon?
That's it for now, thanks.
Okay. The last bit I wanted to mention on learner engagement is that if you think back to the objectives we talked about, the outcome of this course is that the learners are expected to actually demonstrate the skills. So the final part of their project is to actually put together their presentation based on their case. They get 10 minutes in a synchronous course room to summarize that presentation, and they hand in a more detailed written assignment. But the result of this is that not only are they going through the process cognitively, they're going through the process with other people, peers, and they're going through that final step of actually communicating their results to a group of listeners who are playing the role of the stakeholders. Back to you, Maisie.
Thank you, Joe. The final element of the course design section of the rubric addresses technology use. And in an exemplary course design, essentially we're looking to see whether the course uses a variety of technology, but appropriately and also effectively. So, for instance, the tools available within the learning management system are used to facilitate learning by engaging students with the course content. The tools are used to reduce the labor intensity of learning. So, for example, providing links to the needed resources right where they're going to be used within the course versus referring to a website on an assignment, for instance, and not actually providing a link to the assignment right then and there. We're looking to see that the technologies are used creatively in ways that transcend traditional teacher-centered instruction, and that there's a wide variety of media used as well within the course. And you will see that both Joe and Geraldine have used certainly technologies to exemplary use within their course. And I'm going to pass it back to Joe and Geraldine so that they can showcase their technology use.
Believe it or not, I actually have my mic on in time. Hello again, everybody. I think that this is probably the most exciting part of the course design for me. One of the things I'd like to highlight that I use in my course is what I call the course Q&A blog. I use the blog feature, the course blog feature for Q&A. I found this to be a useful tool. It allows all my students to review the questions posed, and many times students will provide a response to the question before I do. This cuts down on email, and it also reserves the discussion board for real class discussions. I think it also supports student engagement. Many times I'll find that students will ask or post questions on the Q&A blog that relate to issues that are not really for me but for their peers. And the dialogue that they have in that blog is very, very rich. In this particular course, I did a course Q&A blog. And when I say course Q&A blog, I used a course Q&A blog to create a course Q&A blog. And that was because there were only 3 projects in the course and there were only 12 students. So I figured we wouldn't have a lot of project-specific questions that would go within each one of the project blogs. For organizational purposes, the blog becomes a part of the project. So when the project is completed, when project 1 is completed, then the blog is no longer available to students. That way, we can keep the blog current as it relates to where we are in the course. The other feature that I like about the using blogs is that I can upload or attach attachments. And what I have done in the past is using the blog postings from prior terms, create an HTML file that is a frequently FAQ, frequently asked questions. And then I add that to the current blog so that students can click on it and go and see if their questions, if a former student in another course at another time had the same question. It really reduces that level of question and answer, especially when you're getting started in a course with students. Would someone please change the next slide? For discussion boards, again, I use discussion boards in my classes exclusively for discussions. And what I always do is the first forum in the discussion board area contains the guidelines, the rubrics, and oftentimes model responses, so that students comprehend exactly what is expected in the project, and the guidelines and rubrics are all right there. So no matter where they are in a classroom discussion, all of the guidelines are right where they're needed, and they are also have model responses right where they're needed. And I typically enter that information as a new thread. And then finally, would someone please change the slide? Wikis. In Project 2 of this particular course, student groups created wikis to share their work performed in Project 2. This was a collaborative activity, and students truly enjoyed it. Unfortunately, at the time this course was offered, our institution was using Blackboard 9.0, so we weren't able to use the Blackboard Wiki. However, we did use a free application, Wikispaces, to share our recommendations. The project revolved around creating new definitions or new focuses for the principles in career and technical education. And now that information is available to the broader community. Joe?
Thanks, Geraldine. I really like that creative use of the wiki. We've just started using wikis, and I'm just amazed at how powerful they can be. I had mentioned a couple of other technology uses in the leadership course when we talked about learner engagement. And I suppose this last piece could also be considered for learner engagement. But the problem that we were facing in this leadership course was, given that it's a leadership course for human services doctoral students who are very focused on their field, but we're trying to get them to open and focus more broadly, the good question we had was, how are we going to get them out of their office? How are we going to get them to talk to people other than human services people? Because that's the basis of a multidisciplinary approach. So I was fortunate to be working with a faculty subject matter expert who was extremely creative and had already designed on our internal, what we call iGuide, our university-wide website, internal website for learners and faculty. She had designed a series of discussions across the entire school related to public service leadership, where she and another faculty member just periodically posted topics that would be of interest to people in the entire school, whether they were master's learners, doctoral learners, faculty, and had been maintaining this. And she said, well, why don't we post a piece of the case study in this series of discussion posts and open this up more broadly, announce it, and have people outside the classroom, including faculty, including practicing professionals, have the opportunity to comment on the case and use that as the content for learners to be able to work on their case. And so what you're seeing on the screen is the 4 threads posted on our website. What we provided in the course room was a link directly to this page. We labeled this part "In Your Professional Opinion." And then next slide, please. When they click on that thread, could we go to the next slide? Yeah. When they click on that thread, the one before that. Yeah, that one right there, 37. That's what they see in the thread. So if you look at it, you'll see there's the title. This children's cultural norms and children's rights was one of the cases. And then directly below that, it says View Vang Family Case Study. when they click that link, it takes them to that Riverbend City setup. So they can actually see that first 5 minutes of the case with a little blurb here and a question posed. Okay, how would you address this as a human services professional? And so in each of the 4 cases that were in the course, the learners could go out and get some input from people who were not in the course. So it kind of expanded the dialogue beyond the course room itself, but simply through a click out of the course room. And the learners would then take what they got out of that discussion and figure out how to synthesize that with the rest of their case. And I would probably say was the most innovative use that we made of technology. And so far, in the first 2 offerings of the course, it seems to be working really well. We seem to be getting as much participation from non-learners or learners not in the course and faculty not in the course as we are with people in the course. And last slide, please. I did mention, I know that some of this stuff is expensive and hard to do and not something you do overnight. I had a team working with me, and this particular course was funded for those particular activities. But if you just start at the upper left, that's Paige Crable, my subject matter expert, the member of the faculty who really is the expert in the field and the expert in that process. The next person over, Felicity Pearson, as a media designer. The one on the right is some instructional designer who looks a little like me. But the 2 people below us, Stephanie Furness and Pete Bolger, actually manage that website that I was just talking about. That's their full-time job, managing the iGuide, including the discussions that I was talking about. And having them as a resource made it very easy to just go to them and say, hey, here's what we want to accomplish. Can we get this set up? And by the way, can we link it directly into our Blackboard course room? And the guy on the left at the bottom, Alan Campbell, was my project manager who has this attitude that if it makes sense educationally, we'll figure out a way to do it. So this is not a typical Capella project. This was an opportunity for me to leverage the resources of a whole team to do some of the kinds of things that Blackboard was looking at. And Macy, I'll just ask you, did we want to start the conversation about what it meant to us as submitters to go through the evaluation process, or should we hold off on that?
I think if we can add a couple of minutes from both of you to talk about your experience from the submission point of view, then I think it certainly would benefit individuals online.
Since my slide is up, I'll start and then I'll throw it to you, Geraldine. For me, creating the course is something I do all the time. I do 4 courses a quarter at that point I've been doing it for just about 2 years. The challenge here when submitting a course for an award is to sit down and look at that rubric and say, okay, where am I really doing these things? We created this course. We know it's got some good stuff in it, but are we really addressing the types of things that Blackboard is identifying as exemplary? And at first, looking at that rubric, I have to tell you, even with my experience, it was a little bit intimidating because I thought, wow, I don't know if I did all this stuff. But then as I dug into the details in the rubric, the levels of the criteria, it began to open my eyes that what Blackboard was looking for in the awards was very similar to the kinds of things we had been trying to do at Capella anyway, sometimes slightly different terminology. And so I began to make that translation, and I was allowed a little bit of time to work on the submission, not a whole lot, but I ended up doing most of it at home in the evenings. But it turned out to be fun because as I went through that rubric, I began to think about what we had put into the course, and I did find a lot of areas that might not have been obvious that I could call out in my narrative for the rubric. And so finally, and then getting the award was super. So altogether, that process was well worth it to me, and it was kind of rewarding and definitely something I enjoyed doing. Geraldine, did you want to comment?
Sure. I'd like to encourage everyone. My course was designed by me. And one of the things that we had a discussion about at the exemplary course luncheon was whether or not there is a difference between a team, or whether it's whether a team had an advantage over a single faculty member. And what we discovered was that the rubric does not differentiate whether or not it's a team or an individual. And the practice that I employed in designing the course, or tweaking the course, because I've been offering the course or teaching that course online many, many years. So the approach that I took when applying the rubric or using the rubric to evaluate my course was keep it simple. It was simple. What did I do when I looked at the criteria? How was I addressing the criteria in the course? And knowing that I could do that. I could do that, just me, little old lowly me, with the tools that were available in Blackboard. But the starting point was my outcomes. What was I hoping for my students to gain? What skills and knowledge were they going to gain as a part of this course? And what evidence did I want them to create or produce as evidence that they had acquired that skill and knowledge? And using that as my foundation, I was able to figure out what Blackboard tools I wanted to use. But keep in mind, when I talk about what Blackboard tools I wanted to use, I was using the tools to address my need, not to simply use the tools. So for those of you out there that are just you, it's okay not to have a lot of bells and whistles. Sometimes having fewer bells and whistles means that you will maximize and perfect the use of the tools that you have available. So that's how I approached it, and this was my second attempt. I used another course in 2011, and the feedback from the reviewers and the exemplary course directors, that information was very critical in helping me design a winning course the second time out. Macy?
Thank you very much to both Geraldine and Joe. And folks, as you can see, that's two examples, one from an ideal situation of having a wonderful course design team to work with, and of course the example of the faculty as the Lone Ranger. So it is possible given both the circumstances, and congratulations to both of you on winning the Exemplary Course Award this past year. We will move into a quick question and answer session if there are any questions out there that remains to be answered.
So Maisie, this is Sharon. There are many questions that have kind of come through and a lot of great discussion that is happening in the chat window. I think one of the questions that was asked was just clarifying the differences between Quality Matters and the Exemplary Course Rubric. Can you speak to that?
That is a great question. The Exemplary Course Program, I would suggest, has been around probably a few years prior to the Quality Matters project. Many of the elements contained in the Exemplary Course Program will also be contained within the Quality Matters. I certainly, as an individual, have not sat down and done a complete comparison of the differences within the two, and I'm not sure if there's any other director that would be able to speak to that in more detail than I would, but I would suggest that both tools are wonderful, whether you are looking at improving course design within your institution, if you are looking at professional development for faculty and course designers within your institution. All of the tools that are out there, like the Exemplary Course Program rubric and the Quality Matters rubric, and there are others there as well, that would certainly help with exemplary course design.
There was a question earlier in the chat window just about accessibility and accommodations for disabilities in the rubric. Do you want to touch on that? Maisie, that question would be for you.
Oh, sorry about that. Forgot to press the talk button again. The rubric does address accessibility and within the course design section of the rubric. I'm not sure what the specific question was, but it is there, elements of accessibility we would be looking for with respect to individuals, including, for instance, appropriate tags on images. Transcripts would be provided in instances where video is used within the course and so on. So there is an extensive list of criteria under accessibility within the rubric.
Do all lesson videos need to be closed captioned? That question came in from Sapita.
I'm sorry, Sharon, could you repeat that question?
Do all lesson videos need to be closed captioned?
Yes, that would certainly, while providing the transcript within the videos would be an important criteria for accessibility, for sure.
So there was a question here from Adrian. Was the move to standardize the icons based on a more institutional look across courses? And I'm not sure if that is for either Joe or Geraldine.
Well, I'd like to go back to the question about the transcripts, first of all, that accompanies the videos, and then I'll talk about the icons. One of the things that I found that was very helpful in transcribing videos, I would make sure that my videos were very, very brief, especially as it relates to lectures or sharing information. My video communication, it was always less than 3 minutes. I used transcription software, Desori, to create audio files of whatever the video was, and that worked really, really well for me. So it was a transcript, but it was a very brief modified transcript, so I had to limit the length of them in order to make it a doable thing. As it relates to icons, the icons were just images that either I paid for or I downloaded, found free video icons that I used, and as long as they were consistent across the courses, it was fine. My institution, we don't have parameters for online courses as of yet here at Wayne State University, so hopefully we'll be able, one of the problems that we do have with our students is that because there is no standardization across the university, every course they take is different in a number of different ways. Sharon?
Thanks, Geraldine. So another question came in related. Would a summary be acceptable instead of a transcript if it was a resource in a blended course, for example? This came from Meg Jess in the UK. I'm thinking that creating transcripts can be time-consuming. We have some tutors that create multiple videos weekly. So would a summary be acceptable?
Is that a question for Maisie?
I think that's a great question. We certainly have not had that in the past, but I would suggest yes. That would be obviously the ideal situation would certainly be that a transcript is made available, but at the same time, summary would certainly be quite useful for both students and as a part of the review process for the course. So if you are in a situation where time is a factor, you would not be able to provide the detailed transcripts, that I would suggest a summary would be quite useful.
Can I address that one as well, Maisie?
Sure.
I'm going to, I fully realize that I have some resources at Capella that may not be standard at other universities, but I would turn that question to you as an individual instructor or an individual university. How do you feel about providing resources in your course room that only those learners who can hear can take advantage of, or those learners that can see can take advantage of. You know, ADA is there for a reason, and if you're going to use that type of resource, it seems like you want to be able to, if not provide a transcript, maybe it's too detailed, maybe at least provide an alternative that provides the same kind of content and involvement, more for, you know, your students and learners' benefit than necessarily for an award criterion.
I think Geraldine had an example she wanted to provide as well.
No, Maisie, I shared it in my earlier comments.
Thank you.
So if people have questions, we're going to continue to stay on. Please feel free to enter them into the chat window, and we can address them. I see there's a question of what is the most efficient transcription software? Can anyone address that question?
I could certainly find out what the instructional design teams are using here on site. I would not know the answer of the software right offhand. I'm not sure if Joe or Geraldine would have that technical expertise.
I use Dragon, but keep in mind, because it's just only me, I use Dragon and I kept my videos very, very brief. So once I trained my iPad to recognize my voice, it's a cumbersome process initially. But once I got everything up and running, and if I keep the videos very, very brief, it provides a solution that addresses my need. Maisie?
We have. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want me to?
Go ahead, Joe.
We have a service that we use. We send it out for a transcript. It's done very rapidly. It's not always accurate. I typically, as the instructional designer, I'll go through that transcript and just use it to get a sense of whether there are things in that recording that I have to edit in some way. But the transcript that's produced in the course room has to be grammatically correct and accurate. So we do send it out to a service. I guess the main issue that I have with the whole transcript thing is that you know, you're providing something that's not just necessarily for people who can't hear, but our audience at Capella is not your traditional student. Our average age of our learner is 39. They have a career, they have a family. They may be able to, you know, go into the course room during their lunch hour, but most likely they're going to be doing their work late at night. And so to be able to hand them a written page that tells them what's in the recording may mean the difference between they're finishing an assignment or not. So we feel that investment in getting a transcript really is an important one.
So there was a question asked much earlier in the chat window about the differences or the uses of wikis versus blogs versus journals. Does anyone want to address that question?
Yes, I've used all three. Wikis, journals, and blogs. I use wikis primarily when I want to encourage group collaboration. I use journals primarily when I want students to reflect. And I use blogs primarily for question and answer. I'm sorry, Sharon, but that's what I use it for. I have yet to use it for any other instructional value. But wikis I find work very, very well when I want collaboration. And I typically set them up in groups, and I use the Blackboard group feature, and then they can do all their dialogue amongst themselves. But the actual wiki is a public piece that they share with their classmates. And once we're done with class, we publish it out for our broader community. Sharon?
Thanks, that's great. And I also just posted a great Getting Started PDF that we have on the On-Demand Learning Center that explains the differences as well.
Hi Sharon, there was also a question with respect to providing links to the 2 winning exemplary courses that we're showcasing here today. If I recall correctly, I think there will be some links to examples from those courses within the open course site.
Yes, they should be both in the open course site, and if they're not, we'll get them added. But you can also find all the exemplary course tours from our 2012 winners at blackboard.com/catalyst winners. So I'm posting that link to the chat forum right now. Okay, are there any other questions? I'm sure I've missed a few, but it's great. The chat is very busy, so if we missed your question, please feel free to enter it back into the chat window and we'll address it now.
And I guess as well, Sharon, we could certainly encourage individuals to continue their discussion in the open course itself.
Most definitely. People should definitely post their questions in the Q&A forum in the open course, either in the general question thread, or if you have something specific to ask one of the exemplary course directors, there's a thread for that as well. And I just see a lot of questions about, will this chat transcript be posted? So the presentation is already all in the course itself. After this is over, we'll post the recording as well as the transcript to the chat window. So every week the session will be recorded and posted. So we'll stay on for a couple more minutes to see if there's any additional questions. All right, so Meg has a question about goals and objectives. What do people think about the potential for objectives to be used like a checklist, or is it perhaps a bit restrictive or prescriptive?
I'm not real sure. Can you give me that again? I'm not real sure I understand the question.
What do people think about the potential for objectives to be used like a checklist?
I'd like to address that, if that's okay.
Please do.
In terms of the grading of assignments in our course rooms, we have a variety of tools that we use to feed into the grading tool. If an assignment is a major assignment, then and it's typically the last or next to last assignment, we expect that the criteria for grading that assignment will in fact be objectives or competencies, almost exactly in that wording, because that's what we say the course is all about. So we have 2 ways of doing that. One we use primarily with graduate courses is a multi-level rubric, where there's it's okay, or the levels are something like they didn't do it, they sort of did it, they met the standard, they exceeded the standard. And if you've seen rubrics, we've got that embedded in the course room. That's for the more significant assignments. The assignments at a lower level, we use essentially what we call a checklist, where the objectives of the assignment are in fact checked off by the instructor with the potential to do some commenting. And those are the 2 primary ways we use it. For Capella, it's really critical to give feedback to the learner on how well they met the objectives or demonstrated the competencies. We feel it's the way you close the loop, and that's really what you're grading in the course. So we think it's really important.
Sharon, I'm going to also chime in on this one. Typically what I do is with the outcomes are made up of a series of activities or assignments, and the checklist is created based on the series of activities or assignments that all lead up to the project outcome, and the project outcomes leads up to the course outcome. So they're all linked together. There's a building block, and that is typically laid out throughout the course, and students are able to see how that assignment relates to the project outcome, the project outcome relates to the course outcome, and the checklist, there's a checklist for each one of the projects, and at the end of the course, if you compile all the checklists, you'll be able to determine where you are as it relates to the course objectives, if I understand the question correctly.
Okay, great. Thanks, Geraldine. And I think at this point, I don't see many questions that are left in the chat window here. A lot of great discussion. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the day. I'd really like to thank Maisie and Joe and Geraldine for a great presentation and for sharing your experience. And again, for everyone else, thank you for joining us today. And we look forward to sharing the next month with you as you log back into the course sites. If you have questions, please go to the Q&A forum in the course itself. We are getting to those questions as soon as we can. Again, I will send out the recording and we'll post that to the course after today's call. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope you have a great week.